back.
Welcome to the Next Step podcast with Jay
and Brad. Wait,
I'm Brad.
I'm Jay. I'm an act.
All right.
I love the little ding from your cell phone. Send
So
me the pictures,
unprofessional.
Jay. Send me the pictures.
So
I
unprofessional.
sent them to you, and then you got mad at me that they didn't. You asked for them.
I said airdrop. Don't text it.
Your
to me.
airdrop wasn't working.
Whatever. Jay,
What's up, Brad?
see, look at this. 2 episodes in a row.
Let's go.
We're back.
I'm here.
I mean,
Part
we
two?
did. We did. We've
part
done one, so we're on another one. We're gonna start with a new section of our podcast.
All right.
Recognize that?
Jay's Addiction. Boom. Out there for the whole world to see.
Jay's.
My kids now have YouTube, so this is a trip.
Yeah.
It's good, though. They already know. Lexi's told them.
So what is that? Where'd that logo come from?
I have no idea. I'm not liable for anything. That's sick.
Can you hear
It's
that?
Jane's Addiction. Where is it?
What song is this? Don't look. Don't cheat.
I already see it. You got to see them in concert. I was supposed to be
I
there.
did. It was kind of sad seeing them.
Not as good. Old. Bless their hearts.
It's sad. So Jay's Addiction.
Let's go.
We're gonna have a new.
That's a dangerous
segment.
place to be.
A new A new
Should say
segment.
Jay's Recovery because Jay's Addiction's free.
I know,
Well,
but there's
it's
no
good.
band.
It's good.
Like, there's a
I know.
band,
I know.
Jane's Addiction.
Yeah. Anyways, I get your point. It's beautiful. I love it.
Funny story about this.
Yep. Okay.
So like, there's a website you can go to have like gigs done, gigs worked, like tech stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy said $5 or I think it's $20 for like logo stuff. And I'm like, hey, can you like copy this logo and like modify it a little bit? Yeah, no problem. $20. I'm like, sick. I'm like, okay, so here's the logo. Change Jane's to J. Jane's to J. He's like, yeah, no problem. $20. 2 days. Get the email back 2 days. I'm so
$20 is $20.
2 days. I wait for it to come back, and it said change Jane to J.
Oh, like he wrote exactly what you said. Bless his heart.
In that font. And I'm like,
India? Where is he?
I can't remember which one. But
Very literal people.
Little language barrier. I'm like, okay.
That's what I mean. That sounds like a literal.
I got to pull that one up and
Language
show. I
barrier.
should have had it there. I'm like, hey, this looks really great. Trying to be nice. This because it's like
This
20.
is
it's
awesome.
20 bucks. This is awesome. But I actually wanted
He's
you
like,
to
fine,
change
$20. So
the
he, sent him,
name.
so he had to send him another 20 to fix it.
No, he had 2 revisions available.
Oh. Okay.
So
At least you didn't get hustled.
It took 2
It took
revisions, but it looks
$60
pretty good.
to get $20 logo. $60 to get 20. I love it.
So
That's
there it
beautiful.
is.
There it is.
All right.
Jay's Addiction.
So here's our segment.
Okay.
I'm gonna play a song that I find like a little. It seems a little bit recovery to me,
Okay.
and you're gonna tell me what like what comes to mind as you listen. I just want you to listen to it. Cameras gonna be on your face. And I think I find it because it's not into that. So sorry.
Starting over.
Yeah. But see, that's with now you know who it is. But I just want to listen to it. Yeah, it's been a while since you've listened to it, right?
Yeah. I haven't listened to it in a while.
Because it's with Ryan Lewis.
Mm-hmm. That's his DJ.
There's a lot of starting overs. Okay, listen. Lyrics are up on the screen if you want to.
I get chills just hearing it. Remember when it came out? Texted it to Xander.
Now, those 3+ years I was so proud of, and I threw them all away for 2 styrofoam cups. The irony, everyone would think that he lied to me and made my sobriety so public there's no fucking privacy. If I don't talk about it, then I carry a date. That's 08/10/08, and now it's been changed. And everyone they put me in some box to say that I never was. It's the false prophet that never came. Or will they think that everything that I've written is all been fake? Or will I just take my slip to the grave? Beep. My parents gonna say success story that got his life together and changed. And you know what pain looks like when you tell your dad you relapsed and look him directly into his face. The seat on your shoulders, the seemingly heavy weight. Haven't seen tears like this on my girl in a while. The trust that I once built been betrayed. But I'd rather live telling the truth than be judged for my mistakes than falsely held up, giving props, loved and praised. I guess I gotta get this on the page.
It's heavy. That's just the beginning. It gets
I
even
know,
heavier.
I'm going to go the chorus, but
yeah, it goes back to what we were just talking about in the last episode of talking about, feeling, they're a little bit propped up just because you're like a leader of a meeting or you have more time than other people. You feel like you're at a level of that you're some wise monk, he says, right? And it's like, dude, you just have more.
because
he
had
just started.
Because Macklemore had a whole album about.
He literally that album, the other side that when that came out is the year I got sober. And I remember listening down on repeat for a lot of people did. Like, and that's what he talks about later in this thing is like he has fans come up to him in a 12-step meeting and he goes there to talk, tell people that he relapsed, but he can't because now all of a sudden, you know what I mean? That's what it felt like when we were like, I was like, I hadn't relapsed, but I'm not perfect. And when you're being held up, like you're this changed person.
You're not the recovery guy, but you're like, that's a big part of your persona.
It is. And
You're-
I remember
you're a
Xander.
dad,
I remember
you're-
Xander talking about that, like when he came back from BYU Hawaii, and I told him what we were doing, the meeting and the podcast. He's like, I don't want to. I hope maybe you won't mind me sharing this, but at one point he's like, I don't want to be that recovery guy. Like I don't want that, like because he wants to have other callings. I've really only had this calling, and I've had some other ones because I asked for them. But I have been like, you get labeled that, and rightfully so. It's like my mission, like it really is. Whether I want to or not, it seems like God wants that. I keep getting pulled back to it. So, but it's hard because especially when you're not perfect.
But guess what? The meeting you're leading now, you're not. It's not a calling.
Yeah,
No one asked.
yeah.
No
That's
one.
what I mean. I'm inspired. Yeah, that's true. The one, that I'm doing down in San Diego. Yeah. So when I first hear that, like it's intense. See, like there, losing his clarity. And you gotta come clean. It's not easy.
So as the normie, when I'd always hear these songs about one day at a time, there's even a TV show called that. Like, it's just funny to me because I'm like, is that when they sit in a circle? When they sit in the circle and talk, my name's Bob, whatever. Like, I just had no concept of what that was. And then even the one days what they tell us, like that means so much more to me now after going to meetings for so long.
It did. Once again, it took years to understand what one day at a time means. I mean, I understand what one day at a time is. You only have 24 hours. But you ride a pink cloud when you first get sober, and they talk about it a lot. And I like, why wouldn't you want a pink? Like everything turns bliss because it was chaos and now it's not. But when trials come back up, that's where you're like, oh, I got to go back to this like just one day at a time thing. That humility.
Okay.
This part's heavy. It chills. That was me.
A couple days sober, I'm fighting demons. Back of that meeting on the east side, shaking, tweaking, hope that they don't see it. Hope that no one is looking, that no one recognizes that failure under that hoodie.
Because you said you stopped going to meetings, partly they were shut down, and then partly they had a purpose. Did you feel like
I didn't feel like that till recently. So like 6-7 months ago when I went to my first meeting I hadn't been to in a while, I felt like that. I had just getting off pills from surgery, and I was definitely not the same person. And I felt like that to a degree of like, there's people in there that haven't seen me like since I had X amount of years sober, and now I'm showing up and I feel like I'm freaking lost.
But
I'm
they
like
don't know that.
No, but that's what you're thinking in your head. You're like, dude, I hope they don't recognize how
like here, like right here.
I really feel.
Just posted up right here. Next line.
It's posted in the back with my hands crossed, shaking. If they call on me, I'm passing. If they talk to me, I'm looking out that door. But before I can make it, somebody stops me and says, are you Macklemore? Maybe this isn't the place or time. I just wanted to say that if it wasn't for other side, I wouldn't have made it. I just look down at the ground and say thank you. She tells me she has 9 months and that she's so grateful. Tears in her eyes, looking like she's gonna cry. Fuck, I barely got 48 hours. She did like I'm some wise monk. I wanna tell her I relapsed, but I can't. I just shake her.
You're feeling it.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it would be when you'd read some, like if you had sent me some of those emails that we used to read, over the last couple of years, or even just 7-8 months ago, I would have felt that exact way. And that's why it hit me, because I'm like, there are people still in the church when I see him on Sundays or whatever, this guy's amazing. He's like helped so many people. And you're like, dude, I'm a freaking mess. Like I'm a mess. Like I'm not perfect. I'm not wise. I have some time, and it's been shaky on and off over the last couple of years with surgery. But you just back to that like stage one humility, like where, I'm driving home. I'm a piece of, you know what? And I lost
You felt
control.
that way recently.
Yeah. You feel like you, because when you don't have emotional sobriety or spiritual sobriety, you quickly, and you know what that tastes like now, right? So when you're an addict, you don't know what that tastes like. But when you've tasted recovery or tasted spirituality or tasted the gospel, they always say you'll never, a head full of AA and a belly full of booze, they say you'll never be happy again, ever, drinking. And that's how it is. Even if you're not using, just trying to go back to another life that's not spiritual, good luck. So that's what I hear. And I thought about when he's talking about this girl that comes up to him, or I envision a girl, maybe it doesn't say a girl, but I envision this girl coming up to him and shaking his hand. That would have been me, because I listened to it that whole first year, him and Eminem's Recovery album. And if there was people that have come to me in the last couple of years to like say that similar thing with our podcast or with the meetings or with something, and I'm like, dude, I just shake my hand and say thank you, or I'm like, I'm stoked you're sober or whatever. But inside, I'm just like, if they only knew, I'm a mess. I'm not perfect. I don't know where I lost this. He says I lost the compass of where self is, and I can't help it. And if you have a foundation of spirituality, that you may never experience that. Maybe you do. I don't know. But when you don't, it's like I said, when my foundation was even though I had a beautiful family, I was abused by a school teacher. I was abused then a little bit, not super abused by my stepfather, and, but like verbally and intense, but it was more that first grade thing that happened to me. You don't trust anyone, and you don't trust anything, and you feel alone. And so you lose, going back to that kid, that's what I felt like I've been living in. I guess I'm trying to say, like, going back to that traumatized kid. And so now my lens is not recovery anymore. This 36-year-old that has all this 10 years of sobriety, it goes back to a 5-year-old. Like, and everything I see now is of that 5-year-old, meaning like, don't trust anyone. Everyone's out to get you. And you start self-sabotaging to prove it. It's crazy what happens when you have childhood trauma. Your life gets good, like mine did, and then it's like clockwork. I remember reading this stuff and I'm going, that's not going to be me. And yeah, if I kept going to meetings and everything stayed the same, the world didn't fall apart, probably wouldn't have been, because it didn't happen. But as soon as I took those things out, or it got taken from me, and then I didn't want to dive back into them, I went back to reverting to that. And then you start self-sabotaging, and then when you self-sabotage, it's like you're trying to subconsciously prove that you're alone, and that no one's really going to be there for you. Because then you start ruining relationships to see who sticks around. And most people bail when you become an a-hole. And most people bail when you start being a pain in the, to be around. And so then that's what's happening in the psychology of the traumatized child, even though they may be 50 years old, right? Or 40 or, So anyways, that's what I was thinking.
We're still going in.
Okay.
Turn the Bluetooth volume up. No?
Uh-oh. Your volume down on your phone?
I changed the setting a little bit.
If I can be an example of getting sober, then I can
Audio's
be an
better now.
example of starting over. If
Oh,
I
that
can
sounds
be
really
an
good.
example of getting sober, then I can be an example of starting over.
Talking about that self-sabotage.
Yeah,
Thought you would go.
that's the exact thing you just said.
I know.
Did you know that line was coming up?
No. No.
But that's the mind of an addict, or
we're all the
with
same.
trauma?
We're all the same. Like, I don't care what your addiction is or what you've been through. The underlining trauma of the separation of oneself through traumatic events in your childhood and through drug or alcohol abuse or sex abuse or whatever it is, we're all the same. I don't care. I don't care what ethnicity you are, where you came from, what cultural background. We're all the same. That's why he can write that and it touches everyone. Yeah. That's why AA can be non-secular and it touches everyone. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's truth is truth. And that's truth is that we as humans, we're all the same. I just feel that way.
What other song hits you with
the ending
addiction?
That part? If you keep going, that part's next level. If you can finish it,
yeah,
the ending gets even more intense.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we're gonna do this whole song.
Yeah,
this whole podcast.
Got it. Yeah, this one
Music
song
review.
sums it up.
1, 2, now. Those 3+
Oh, this is the beginning still.
So proud of.
You got to go to the middle.
All the way for 2 styrofoam. If it wasn't for other side,
Yeah, right there.
Beep, boop.
Like so many others, I just
Listen right here.
I never thought I would. Didn't pick up the book. Doing it by myself didn't turn out that good.
So he left the meetings.
If I can be an example of getting sober, then I can be an example of starting over. If I can be an example of getting sober, then I can be an example of starting over.
Missed a little bit of it, but that's it right there. I mean, just what he says right there. Tried to do it on his own. Didn't pick up the book. Separated him.
Meaning the big book.
So yeah, what he's clearly talking about is he got sober, right, from the meetings, from the 12 steps, then does what most people did. And I saw this early in recovery. That's why I never stopped going to meetings, because it was clear. The 3 guarantees of relapse: stop going to meetings, stop calling your sponsor, stop working the steps. That simple. Nothing else.
You've said that
hundreds of times in front of you, meetings, recordings. It doesn't matter. I've said it over and over again. That's what he's talking about. He did. And what's crazy is I didn't choose that, but that's what happened, right? With 2020 and so it's the same. It's the guaranteed thing. If you stop going to meetings because you're not connecting because there is a spiritual connection when you sit in a room full of other people, other addicts that have different stories, but it's all the same. And you read from Scripture, basically the 12 steps are another form of Scripture that are truth, the gospel truths that are inspired from Heavenly Father, like we both believe. And then you share openly and honestly, and you're tapping into something out of worldly. It's not of this world, right? And the Spirit's there, and it's just everyone, normies that go in that have never, they went there because they're trying to bring someone, they tap into it, and some of them never leave. They're like, I want to be a part of this because this is just boom.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah. I mean, and so that's what he's saying. He pulls out of that, and then he goes and then he's like, look at it with like that is gone. And having to call his dad, having to tell his girlfriend, now seeing people in public that have put him on a pedestal. It's not easy to do. And I'm glad I didn't have a full-blown relapse in a sense where I'm out like, stealing pills out of people's closets. But I think it got us close to spiritual death as I want to get ever again. I hope that.
That's good, man. That's good. Let's go through some slides that you have.
Oh, yeah. From my presentation.
From your presentation you did recently.
Oh, yeah. So this is crazy. Addiction in America. So right here, the top one, 21 million Americans, 21 million. There's about 350 or so, 370 million. So 21 million Americans have at least one addiction, yet only 10% of them get treatment. And that's just off a census, right? So how many more, right? These are, of course, going to be downgraded. Drug overdose deaths have tripled since 1990. So in 30 years. Okay, this is our kids are now in this time. And remember what I said, you're more likely to die under the age of 50 from opiate overdose than anything else. Addiction costs the U.S. economy over $600 billion every year.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
A previous episode, you had surgery with prescribed medication. How was the difference of doctors pushing like, hey, take this,
way less,
prescribe this?
Way less, but you can still get, you're still getting drugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there any doctors asking about addiction? Like any questions, any questionnaires?
Yeah, I think it's on paperwork. When you first fill out your first thing, it's like, have you ever had any abuse or whatever that?
Okay.
You got to be, if you write that, you probably won't get anything. So you need to be careful. Because I do believe that these pain meds are there for extreme surgery. Like I know some hardcore Rambo type people out there that they'll never touch it again. Good for them. Maybe they're, that's the right thing for them, right? Mm-hmm. That's between them, God, and their sponsor, right? Mm-hmm. But as far as the people that I look up to that have way more time than me, They have a necessary thing.
So it has gotten better.
Way better. Oh,
the
yeah.
Medical.
If I went and asked for a refill without, I took the lowest dose of what I could take. I took it's called Tylenol 3s. It's Tylenol with codeine. And if you're someone that's a normie, you're like, oh, that stuff's heavy. And it is heavy. But here's what's crazy. In 10 years, so go back 11 years ago, I could take a bottle of 50 of that and do nothing to me. I've done it. I've stole Tylenol coating out of people's cabinets. And I've taken, you get constipated for sure. But I've taken 40 or 50 almost in a 24-hour period. It did nothing. And now, 10 years later, in sobriety and having surgery, a half of one is enough to change my world to the point of, it's scary. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Like
but that's part of the, you're going to get into deaths and over-addiction. But
yes.
But now that it's harder to get, once addiction kicks in, that's why people go to the streets.
They offered me harder stuff.
They go to the streets though and they end up getting
fentanyl,
right?
And then, now you just don't. So carfentanol is being cut. It's being produced in China, mass produced in China. And it's 100 times more addictive than morphine and opiate and all this stuff. It's like hundreds and hundreds times. It's a synthetic version. Comes from China, gets imported to Mexico. Cartel brings it up.
So
America.
I'm new to the drug game.
I'm so happy I'm not getting drugs on the street, I guess, because it's literally Russian roulette now.
But 10 years ago I never even heard of fentanyl.
Is
it a new drug?
No. Fentanyl patches have been around.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, some friends I know that
from doctors.
I got it when I had diverticulitis a few weeks ago. When I went in there, I was in excruciating pain. Thought my appendix had burst. So did they, because it was so bloated and they could feel. They couldn't even touch me. Like it was
IV form of it.
IV. I'm giving you a painkiller. They didn't say what it was. Boom. Instant relief. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can breathe. I thought I'm going into surgery here in a minute, right? That's so did they. They're like, oh, we got to get a CT scan and to get you approved, and then we're going to get you surgery because of insurance, right? Yeah. They have to prove that you have it. Good thing, right? Otherwise, they cut me open. I didn't have an appendix burst. Oops. But fentanyl, that was powerful. I had never taken it. That was, as far as I know, it's the first time I've ever taken fentanyl. And it was instant relief, but it goes like this, Brad. It's crazy. It's not like another opiate. A lower dose of a Tylenol with codeine or Vicodin, it's slower and gradual and stays in your system longer. The fentanyl hit within seconds, and it was over within seconds. That's the problem with it. Okay, is it takes you this extreme relief high, pain reliever, which is great, euphoria. But it was like 30 minutes, and I was like hitting the button, like come back in here. The pain's coming back, and they're like, oh, let's give you a lower dose. I'm like, I don't care, just get the. It was so bad. They gave me like a Vicodin or a Percocet in the IV, something I used to abuse, and it lasted for 5-6 hours. Not as fast. Not as high in a feeling of euphoria, but the pain, you know what I mean? So it's not even that good of it's crazy. I mean, it is in a sense of euphoria, but it crashes
That's why
quick.
they're cutting it with other drugs.
Yeah. It's cheaper too. Yeah. It's because it's synthetic. It's easier to get. Because although the other opiates actually come from an opiate plant, it's big business and it's hard to get. 20% of Americans suffer from depression and anxiety disorder along with substance abuse. Once again, that's only 20% that reported it, so it's way more. We know that. More than 90% of addicts start with a substance before the age of 18. Almost every person you've heard in recovery says that, right?
Yeah. Do you think, I have a theory, I don't think it's proven out, maybe it is, but kids between 18 and 25, I'd go 14 and 25 are addicted to something. They're addicted to these devices. A game.
This is not even talking about
right, but like we're going through this addiction cycle at a much earlier age. Do you think that leads to... Like I'm trying to think back. My kid, like Atari, wasn't that addictive. It kind of sucked. Yeah. But like things that I was consuming or whatever.
Yeah. Like I was addicted to skateboarding when I was a little kid. Like I mean, it was my form of relief from my chaos in my home. So I wanted to skateboard all the time. It wasn't even that good.
It's a different dopamine hit than.
But you get addicted. Like that's all I thought about. That's all. My son, 11 years old, he's obsessed with surfing to the point where you ask him and he hasn't surfed in days. It's all he's thinking about. Right. You know what I mean? Like healthier, but I'd rather than thinking about that than pornography. Yeah. But you know what I mean? That's how much I guess the brain is wired to get obsessed about things. Probably because of DNA ancestral to keep you alive, right? Like, and so you can accomplish hard things, right? Yeah, get food. So then the next line it says, Americans between the age of 18 and 25 are most likely to be addicted to drugs. And then 130 Americans die daily from prescription. This is just prescription. This is not alcohol. This is not pot.
That's just a doctor
gave
you.
That's not meth. That's not, these are prescription.
A day.
Yeah, so a pill versus a heroin or fentanyl. So it says 130 Americans die from prescription opioid overdoses, not even including heroin, a day. That's crazy. Every day. So in the what time is it? You know, it's about halfway through the day. 60, 70 people have died today in America that have just been reported, let alone all the illegals that are dying too, like people that aren't on censuses,
Right.
people, you know what I mean? It's insane.
Right.
And yet we are talking about other things that barely kill anything or anyone. It's
Right.
crazy.
Right.
So even though it's gotten better and it's more known, it's, yeah, it's crazy.
So what is this? Addiction, life, popular definition,
Also-
view addiction.
Yeah, so it goes. So when I was giving this presentation, and I got this from a talk from Gabriel Mate, he's like a famous doctor who's written a bunch of books. Definitely look it up. His newest one is Trauma America, something with trauma. Anyways, I'm reading it right now.
We'll put the post up.
We'll put a post. Yeah,
Amazon
he's
link.
amazing. But he has a little TED talk or an interview with Sam Harris. Maybe it came from and another podcast, and he gives this definition of addiction. He goes through this. This is where I got this from. He says the popular definition of addiction, and he's been in this industry in the health side of it for a long time, 50 years. He says addiction is a choice, right? Society views it as a choice. You thought it that way. I thought it that way. When I was on my mission, I was telling people, stop using. It's a choice. Stop.
And some people can stop.
Yeah, not everyone's. So
But
me and my
not
sponsor have been
everyone's-
talking about this. Not everyone's a true addict or alcoholic. It's fact. Someone can abuse drugs and abuse alcohol, and not be a true alcoholic or addict. I don't.
It's hard for you to fathom.
Yeah, it's best to not try to figure out which one you are because normal people don't even think about it.
Right.
So if you're even on that spectrum, you probably have a problem.
You told me that before. Is like
Yeah.
normal people don't count how many pills they have left.
Yeah.
Normal people don't
Think
count-
about how many drinks of alcohol they have.
Yeah, I have how much is left in my drink.
If you're if you're listening to this and thinking, I may not, my friend sent me this, my loved one sent me this podcast, or I found it on my own. I don't think I'm like Jay. And I only look at porn 3 times a week, not 3 times a day. Okay,
So
the fact that you just
counted,
even
they
the
knew
fact
that?
that you counted and you're having a analysis of it and taking an inventory of how much you're using it. Normal people that don't have a problem with a substance that's legal or an activity that's illegal, they don't think about it because it's not affecting their life negatively. I can argue that if you one time is doesn't mean you're over. It just means it's not good for you, right?
Right.
Like I'm not going to drink. The odds of me drinking a Monster right now is slim and none. It's just poison. Like I don't want that unless I'm at Disneyland and that's all they sell.
I kind of want one right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like,
I've
if
had-
you had a choice
I've had-
between that and a mate or something that's healthier, you're going to
mate's
choose it,
way
right?
better. Yeah.
So he goes, society says that, and he goes, addiction is primary brain disorder that arises in the brain largely due to a genetic reason. This is what the medical science says. It's all done, right? We all know in the 90s, genetics became a big thing. I'm fascinated with it. Turns out in his new book, The Trauma, Normalizing Trauma or whatever it's called, such a brain fart right now in that book title, but he talks about, he gives these stats of, you've heard of women chopping their breasts off because they get genetically tested and they have the gene for
Yeah.
breast cancer, and it kills insane amount of Americans,
Right.
like more than I think even opiates. Like
Right.
breast cancer's.
Prophylactically, they're like the odds
Yeah.
of me getting breast cancer are very high.
So I'm just going to chop them off, or they take them what is it called?
Prophylactically.
Prophylactically, in order to make better the odds of not getting it. Preventative. That's the word. Here's the crazy part.
Makes me sound
Listen
more
to this.
educated.
Out of that 100, that does make sense. Out of the 100, I think it's 150,000 people die. Women die a year of breast cancer. Guess what? How many percentage of them have the genetic gene for it?
I don't know.
So 130,000, let's say, it's probably a little more than that. Only 7%. 7% of women that die. This is a fact. This is not me. This is in a book, peer reviewed in the whole thing, right? So let's just call it round numbers. 100,000. Only 7% of them actually have the genetics. So if you look at recovery, the same thing, or addiction, the medical field says it's something genetically. I don't buy that. Neither does Gabriel Mate. So I can go on. So then, the other way. So then the next one. So he goes right here. This is his definition.
Is that what he looks like?
Yeah, pretty much. He's pretty old.
Okay.
He was in like Auschwitz when he was a kid.
Okay.
Like he was separated. That's where his childhood trauma came in.
Okay.
His mom had to give him up
Was
to
he an
survive.
addict? I don't know. I don't know.
No. He claims he was a workaholic at one point.
Okay.
So because of his childhood trauma, it
The
formed-
doctor, what's his?
he's a doctor. Oh yeah.
Okay.
One of the world-renowned doctor on this.
Okay.
He's from Canada. Addiction. So his definition, he says in that interview, is addiction is any behavior. This radically changed my view in the last 4 years. Is when I first read it. Any behavior that a person finds relief and therefore craves. So specifically, he highlights crave in the short term, but suffers negative consequences in the long term. So short-term pleasure and craving, long-term negative consequences in the long term, and doesn't give up despite the negative consequences that are inevitable. That's what he said his definition of addiction is. So any behavior, not some, any behavior that a person finds relief of, right, therefore craves in the short term. So short-term relief, long-term pain, can't stop, despite the pain's coming.
It's great.
That's gnarly when you think about it.
Yeah.
How many, that fits everyone.
Yeah.
Like in some way, shape, or form. Someone's got something there.
So you could go through the most, let's just go through caffeine,
Yeah.
right? Energy
Yeah,
drinks, right?
caffeine's the most used drug in the world.
It's a drug.
Of the world. Like some experts say it's the most widely used drug on the planet because it's an actual drug.
Wars were fought over coffee bean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's still insane business, right? Like, so yeah, caffeine is the most mind-altering substance that's used.
So suffers negative consequences could be.
So when you wake up in the morning,
Back of
right here,
bad
so
sleep,
watch this, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you feel this way, I feel this way. Most people, my wife, everyone. You wake up, bishops, doesn't matter. If you're drinking caffeine on a regular basis, when we all wake up,
we're not making a judgment call on it. We're just running through this model right here.
Once again, this is just my opinion. So other people can have their own. But this is experts that have written books on caffeine too, that have been on other podcasts. And they say, when you wake up in the morning, you feel that grogginess, that headache, that like, I need caffeine to feel normal. It's the same thing.
Short term.
Same thing that I felt waking up from opiates. Not as intense. I don't feel like I have a flu. But if you went a full 24 hours with that caffeine, we all start to feel like we're having a flu. You start to withdraw.
Headaches.
We had a friend just get off of caffeine. He used that as a pill called Wean, and you type in on the online. It's beautiful. I want to do it. I'm like toying with the idea, but I'm so scared. And one of the girls that comes to my new meeting, she just did it. She's only got 7 months sober from heavy drugs and alcohol, and now she's.
What's the website called?
Well, the company's called Wean, like weaning yourself off.
Okay.
And you type in, say you take 200 milligrams a day, and it'll send you a package of pills, little caffeine pills, so you don't have to think. You take these amount of pills day one, this amount two, three, and it slowly weans you off, so you have less negative consequences. Because if you stop cold turkey, if we stop for the next 24 hours, everyone in this room is not going to feel very good.
Right.
It's pretty crappy.
Which is like other drugs itself. So like alcohol, opiates, you can't.
But the hard part with that is like it also enhances life, right? Like there's all this, like when you're talking about caffeine, this is where there's healthy addictions or whatever. If you want to look at it, you're splitting hairs, but there's really good effects.
Just like using
from
this
caffeine.
as this model.
Totally,
right? I'm going to do phones next, right?
Phones, yeah. So short term,
next.
getting off Instagram, you start to realize like how much you've been addicted to it. Right?
Let's go social media.
So social media. So
TikTok.
When I first got off Instagram, you now have a void of this self-gratification, right? Dopamine hits that you get when you check your feed and someone liked your comment or responded to you in a positive way. And there's no more competition.
There's no more negatives either.
There's no more negatives either, but it doesn't matter. Your brain doesn't recognize the it's like hardwired, like it doesn't get that dopamine, and it's hard. The first few months of being off social media is the hardest thing ever. And then it becomes normal, and then you start to realize, like, I can't believe I was looking for so much gratification through other people. And then anyways, so yeah. To be done with anything.
And then suffers negative consequences in long term.
Yeah, long term, like social media, listen, I think one of the for me, just me, with social media, the positive and the negative. The negatives are the algorithms are set up for you to be on there as long as possible. That's the goal. It's a fact. Documentaries are out there. Like, people who created the software have proven this. This is not the theory. This is not conspiracy. That's what the whole point of it is, because we're the revenue source, right? We're the product.
Eyeballs.
Yeah, our eyeballs and our time on. Right? They want you engaged as long as possible. So if you're more contentious, what do you think they do? They algorithm set you up with things that you're against. If you're more loving, what do you think it does? The algorithm gives you more loving stuff, because you get that. They know how to tap into your dopamine.
Oh yeah.
Whatever you triggered by, most people are triggered by negative. Unfortunately, we're hardwired to be more addicted to things that are negative. Yeah. And probably survival mode back in the day, but it doesn't matter.
Anger is more addictive than love.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Especially when you have trauma.
Yeah.
So anyways, but go on to the next slide. So this is his definition. And this is what was the biggest eyeball opening for me. Remember, society says just stop. It's a choice. Medical journals say it's a genetic. He says
You're
it's
just
this.
born that way.
It's this and then he says it's a little different. It's like a bunch of stuff. And then he defines real quick what trauma and traumatic is, because this was new to me. I never heard this. Most people it is. He says events themselves that we normally think of as trauma events are not what trauma is. They are traumatic, but the loss of self. Remember that song, Macklemore? Lost the compass of where self is. So he says, but the loss of self is the essence of trauma. The real purpose of addiction treatment or the healing is reconnection. He goes, childhood trauma isn't a prerequisite for addiction, but I have never met a person suffering with addiction that didn't suffer from childhood trauma. That's powerful. When I think of trauma, you think of like being abused, right? I was abused at first grade, or someone getting a cigarette put on me. You think of something,
bullied,
a kid getting hit,
or parents,
sexual abuse, right? Whatever it is. He's saying that's not trauma. That's traumatic. That's intense. I punch you in the face. That's a traumatic event. If you now change your DNA, and they've proven this, like your DNA does change based on the trauma that happens. I said 2020, this makes sense now. Because I learned this before 2020, and then here I'm giving you a recap of the last 3 years, right? Or 2 years. And that the world goes into complete chaos. My biggest fears, I think, come true. The world's ending, right? And I have all these little kids, and I have to like protect and my own life and fear, all this stuff. And then it's like, it stimulates you separate yourself. Like in 2 years of living with that underlying anxiety, you start to separate yourself from self, the essence of self. So when I was abused at 6 years old, and most kids, at that age, I never, and I'll remember this like it was yesterday. I don't remember the events, but I do remember never being the same. I do, and I see it in my kids. Like my one daughter, June, is 6 years old. If she was abused, she would not be the sunshine she is right now ever again. It's impossible. And even to this day, like Christ is kind of making me whole again. He's repairing me, but it's like it'll be something I'm going to live with probably forever until the next life where I get a full resurrection of fullness and a wholeness, because you separate from who you are. And so that's what he's talking about. The real treatment needs to be reconnecting. And, I've had moments where I felt like I was reconnected and I felt like I was healed, but clearly like it just takes another event to trigger it again. And so you got to be careful. So anyways, that's powerful. I don't know what you think about that, but it's pretty crazy.
What's going through my head is there's a lot of people addicted to pain medication, physically addicted versus emotionally addicted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes these definitions
put it this way.
Go through
when I was on pills this year for surgery, right? And for my neck injury,
like there's some chemicals that are physically addictive.
Because my life, even though it's been rough with spirituality, like we talked about, and I'm not in the best place, or I wasn't in the best place over the last 12 months. It's not the same. I was able to not take more than I was supposed to, because I'm not trying to cure. I know, right? Like, so this proof, like, I don't know, maybe some would probably say that he's not a real addict or whatever, because some alcoholics say if they take one sip of alcohol, it's over. Yeah. Right? That's what you hear. Well, I've taken one pill and I didn't take the rest of the bottle that day. So I don't know what that means.
The visual I have was like outside that room is your addiction doing push-ups.
Yeah,
so what's that?
But it's a gorilla in the other room doing push-ups, waiting for you to slip.
Yeah, when you took that and you knew you had the pill, were you like, was there voices going, not voices, but that like.
Well, it was definitely cautious. Like, you're more cautious because you know where you've been. It's like a loaded gun. Like if we were to go shooting right now, because I grew up with guns and I had proper gun safety, I know that thing is just a tool. It would never go off on its own. But I do know it can kill you.
Don't tell Alec Baldwin that.
Yeah, right. It just went off on its own. And so it's like, but you have immense respect for it. That's how I look at pain meds now.
Okay.
But I was able to use them, responsibly to a degree. I think any amount of use I probably used them a little too long, but like I was still able to take a half a day for, versus the old Jay that the whole bottle wouldn't have done nothing. Nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing.
No. So my question is, this says childhood trauma isn't a prerequisite to addiction, but I've never met a person suffering with addiction that it did suffer from childhood trauma. We have a mutual friend that had like knees or total hip replacement.
Yeah. That's trauma.
Okay.
Physical trauma. So that's traumatic. That's traumatic.
Traumatic.
Right?
Okay.
Think about it. So they're saying, they've even done studies.
And where he's like, I was physically addicted.
Let's say you're 5-year-old. I have 4 kids. You have 4 kids. All of the way they perceive traumatic events can be all different.
True, yeah.
The world sees it as just a major.
To me, it's different.
You yelling at them one time in the highest tone because they caught cheating at school, or I yell at my daughter for hitting the other daughter or whatever.
Just as an example.
Just an example. This never happened. This never happened. No, but like they say, one time not backed up with love and compassion is enough to sometimes trigger, or it happens at school. Say a teacher. Dude, listen. When I got so far behind after first grade of being abused, and I moved schools 3 times until I was in 4th grade, 3rd grade, I stayed in the same school. I was so far behind that it got to the point where every teacher started to repeat to me that you're dumb. I got labeled ADD, I had dyslexia. All these learning disabilities come from usually these events, right? Because it slows down the brain because it goes from fight or flight. It can't learn new subjects. It can't do anything. It's literally trying to survive. You go into the survival mode. Even though I had a roof over my head, my mom wasn't abusing me. I had
your
this
needs
loving,
were met.
My needs were more than met. I lived in South Orange County. My life was great. So when people hear my story, they're like, oh, it's like, no, my life was great. But the 5-year-old was in charge till I was 26. Everything I did was through the lens of I had separated from who I was supposed to be. I joined the church at 19. I start to come back to who self is, but then quickly within a year and a half of being on my mission, I get on painkillers and then I'll lose it again. And I think it was here's my new theory. I thought about this last night after the meeting. The trauma was re-engaged because I feel when I went on my mission, I was in the zone. It was great. And I don't mean like self-righteously, like, no. I was connected to the Spirit. I was in the zone. I was in the pocket. And surf analogy. And the like 2020, when I got to the Philippines, when I landed in the Philippines and I looked around, it was too much for me to understand. And I think this is happening to a lot of people. And it's not just me, but I didn't realize this until years later, 10 years later. But what had happened was I saw millions of people starving. I saw millions of people living in legit chaos. And
you'd never seen that ever before.
South Orange County. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and you could be from the slums of LA. It doesn't matter. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not today.
Skid Row times a million because it's everywhere and it's chaos. It's just loud and it's nuts. Everything I can explain to you is there. And I think I was just, it awoke that 5-year-old again, feeling unsafe and being scared. And then I looked, as soon as those drugs hit me, right? 8 months later on the surgery on the mission, it was like, oh, whew. It's like that fentanyl in the hospital, relief. It's crazy. You just immediately feel relief.
Yeah. Okay.
So he goes in here. Yes. So go back. So he says right here, so his trial to trauma is reconnecting, right? So now I'll go to the next one. He says, no more isolation. There's a lot of theory here. And here's what I'm talking about. There's a lot of theory and there's some TED Talks that have been happening about the rat park.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Here's where it's not all true. That's not that one explanation. Some of it is, there's truth in it, but it's not 100%. I was on my mission when I got I abused painkillers and got addicted. I was around the right people.
Mm-hmm. You had connection.
I had connection. I had every need met. Mm-hmm. Okay. They say in Rat Park, as soon as you have all the nice things, you'll never want to do that.
Yeah.
Bull. You know what I mean? If you, you know what I want to say. I want to, beep. I want to say it because it's the word to say here. And it's like, when I stepped in the Philippines and saw the chaos, the trauma, kid was awoken again. I'm now looking at the world I was 21, but really I was 5. Felt unsafe.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the drugs came into me, right? It took till I was 26. So another 6 more years to get reconnected and sober. And so he talks about here is more isolation. It says the way to break out of addiction cycle is to reconnecting to one's authentic self, not to people, right? Not to a healthy environment. I had a healthy environment. Are you kidding? Seattle? I was now in Seattle mission. Missionaries that loved me, whatever, like blah, blah, blah. Had all my needs met. I was no longer in chaos, Philippines. Yeah. But, all of a sudden, I didn't feel like I've connected myself and I'm 36, until my sobriety.
So how do you get connected with your authentic self?
Steps. Step 1. Okay. Step 1 in getting honest. I mean, these steps are what really bring you back to that, right?
So this is like society. Society has this like myself, me. It's a weird,
which is hard because some of it
because the definitions are like changing right now.
Yeah.
So we hear this a lot of like with the me generation, right? Yeah. Me, my truth, my. Yeah. Very selfish oriented. Yeah. Is that the same as reconnecting to your authentic self?
Well, that's the hard part. So when you first hear that, I'm like, yeah, that sounds crazy. But then you're like, well, when I do tell people that are new in the program, when you're working these steps, you need to be selfish. It's about you, right? It's about reconnecting to one's authentic self. He says there's a few, and I didn't write this up here, but he said there's 3, I can't remember them all, but there's 3 unnegotiable needs that humans need. One is connection. Mm-hmm. Connection. Like if you take a baby away from its mother, put it on the table, it ain't gonna live. It needs to be connected to survive. Second one, this is survival. So these are unnegotiable needs he talks about in that document.
Can I talk about each one of these?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give ask questions about real versus fake connection on there. So like if I can connect with other, now easier than ever online, some group, pick an addiction, pick one.
Porn.
I can find hundreds of thousands of people that are like, no, porn's good for you. You're using it. The only reason you feel bad about using porn and whatever is because of your religion or because of your wife or whatever reason.
They'll tell you that. Yeah.
And over and over. And so my authentic self is like, no, I'm a sexual being. I need to look at porn.
Yep.
You could do this with anything.
Yeah.
There's weed forums. There's opiate forums. There's
Christianity is the reason why you're where you're at, because it's
right. So
it's,
how does one differentiate between connecting?
Because when you do these steps, it always goes back to the steps. When you do step one, you get honest, right? Step two, you have hope and faith.
Does it go back to this one? The negative consequences in the long term?
No, it goes into step 4. So in my mind, when you ask me that question, it goes into step 4. Step 4 is an inventory of your life. And at first you look at step 4, and the reason why a lot of addicts won't do it, or they struggle with this one and hang up on it, and I hung up on it for a long time too, is because you just think of step 5, which is confession. And right, no one wants to tell anyone their dark secrets, right? Goes into the DNA, right? Probably being ostracized from the tribe. But in step 4, what it really does, the reason why that step's so life-changing is because you list out your fears, right? So the false evidence appearing real, right? That's an acronym for fear. But you list out your fears. Some of them authentic, right? Like being harmed as a child, or being alone, or losing your family, or dying of a disease.
So that's where you identify these authentic self.
Yeah,
like
this
what
is
you're
how
afraid
you get back.
of.
The question is, how do you get back? Step 4.
How do I get through my BS of my justification?
You call a sponsor daily,
which is
you can't do it on your own.
To seek out what's my authentic self, not like this fake self or the self I want to be or whatever.
Yeah. So once again, if you do it from the worlds or Instagram, right? If you do it in the world, you're always going to find a new hole to fall, like, right? To be alone in, and to be dark in, and to be lost in. But if you do it through the program, right, which is secular in the world or in the church's program, it doesn't matter. It's a backdoor to spirituality. And it's designed that way on purpose, because you list your fears, you list your misconduct, and you list your resentments, and you start to see a pattern that shows up. Everything starts in the mind, right? You hear that all the time, these catchy clips and documentaries and books and whatever, and these quotes, motivational, but it's actually true. Your thoughts are actually proving that can actually change your DNA. You can rewrite the genetic code to a degree. I don't know, they're just learning this. This is like, the state-of-the-art stuff right now, but they're finding that your thoughts can literally shape everything. So the world would say manifest, just think about nice things and it'll work out. Well, it's not all false, but it isn't all true either. Like, it starts there, right?
It's a powerful tool.
It's a powerful tool, and it's necessary. And if you've been motivated, what you find is by doing the 4 step, because you go to the misconducts and then resentments, it starts with fear. It leads to you lashing out because you're in a state of fear. You're in a state of fight or flight, cortisol. You cause harm. That person harms you back, and then it's a cycle of resentment. So you start to see like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not any different than anyone else, right? I'm a human with strengths and weaknesses. The fears have been controlling me. If I want to find my authentic self, I have to rid myself from fear. And I'm telling you, that's going to take a lifetime for almost all of us. And here's the hard part. The world right now is saying that you can take hallucinant drugs. You could take mushrooms,
Costa
Rica, ayahuasca, DMT, and they're literally, even this doctor, he takes people on ayahuasca ceremonies, and he claims, and there's some science here that they say it can rewrite synapses, but it doesn't always work. That's the thing that they don't talk about the most, is that some people never come back. Some people have psychedelic trips that take them to another planet, and they've now they had underlining disorders under there, like personality disorders, schizophrenia that was underdiagnosed, bipolarism, and they take these drugs, and it definitely rewrites something, and they never come back. Same thing as even pot can do. So it's hard, because I want to believe this is what the child in me that's been traumatized.
The quick fix.
Yeah, and it's not even that quick. I mean, ayahuasca sounds miserable. It's a 3-day event, and you're throwing up.
It's a weekend versus a lifetime of working on it.
But they all say, even the people that I do believe have used it as a tool to help them, and I do believe they're genuine. They're not trying to like push an agenda on people. Even them, they talk about that you can have an experience of an awakening, just like at the breathing thing that I did, right? When I talked about that, where you can do the holotropic breathing, these Wim Hof breathing techniques, and have a spiritual awakening or whatever. But it's the work that's done afterwards. Even the people that are I should say the more conscious people that talk about psychedelics in a healthy, like as a medicine, they all say it's the work afterwards that really makes the difference. So once again, and they all say too, and Gabriel talks about this and other people, you don't need it, but they say that it can help you or whatever. I haven't used hallucinogens to get to where I'm at, and I think the 12 steps can get you there. And I think it's something that's gonna be more lasting, because if you're relying on a pill, or you're relying on a drug, or you're relying on a natural substance like ayahuasca, which is not natural necessarily.
Isn't opium a natural substance?
All this stuff is natural.
Cyanide.
Tylenol, caffeine, everything. That's all natural. So when people, it's medicine, it's a plant. Okay, yes. So is all the poison that can kill us. It all derives from a plant. Okay, now it may have its use in the ecosystem of the world, but I'm telling you right now, ayahuasca is mixing of two plants that don't happen naturally. Now, mushrooms, they say, grow naturally from cow manure. But last time I checked, you and I aren't, going to poop on the grass to eat it. So, you know what I mean? Maybe the God of this world told someone to do that. Maybe. I don't know. All I know is that I do know a lot of people that they have to keep going back to that substance. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It seems very appealing to be able to go on a weekend retreat.
Think about it all the time sometimes.
And then be fixed.
Over the last 3 years when I've been in this traumatic state, I want to go back. Me and my friends were like, man, I wonder if it really would work. Because, dude, listen, it sucks when you have a lifetime of chaos and you still have those memories and you've done all this work for 10 years in recovery and therapy and stuff, and you can still be triggered by one event. And then they're promising you do one thing, one event with them, and it'll be gone for a lifetime. That's appealing.
Is it free to go do it?
No, it costs money. And just like everything else that's like, we go back to religion. It's like when I just watched The Chosen, right? Yeah. He didn't charge for it.
Is that drug? Curious, like how much does an ayahuasca plant cost? Is it a cheap drug?
I mean, I'm sure that, mushrooms are cheap.
Raw
super cheap, $20 probably. You get
but that's like a retail price, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can grow it yourself. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you did one of these ceremonies, it's like $6-7 grand.
Yeah. So what's beautiful to me is the 12-step community.
It's free.
Yeah. And
just like everything that comes from
when
Christ,
you sponsor someone, it's free. The amount of time, I've been over your house, you've been in the garage meeting.
I've done more
hours
than anything
hours
else,
and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
With the recoup of payment being, no, I'm sober today.
Yeah.
Which is just a powerful witness. But on this other note, it seems like, wow, that's a lot of work. Like I'm great. Hopefully this comes across great.
Yeah.
I'm grateful I don't have to go through that.
Yeah. Have to try to make that choice. Yeah.
But I remember vividly early going into addiction recovery, the meetings, the 12-step meetings, is like, I was a little jealous of the connection everyone had in recovery. Even then, I always thought it was crazy that you would say, I'm thankful for my addiction. I'm like, really? Are you just saying that?
Yeah.
Are you just saying that? Yeah. But then I felt it you are, because it keeps you grounded.
It brings you to this.
It reconnects.
Most people are
doing the steps, reconnects you to your authentic self.
Most people have had some level of traumatic event happen in their life, right? The smaller the level, the less likely to substance abuse, right? Or fall into a deep addiction, but they still don't know who their authentic self is. Right? Why are all these women doing all this stuff to themselves? Why are all these men taking all this stuff? The society is trying to, to do all this stuff to be something you're not authentically. And the reason is because we're disconnected to, once again, I heard this again in the gym this morning, but we're spiritual beings having an earthly experience, not the other way around. We're not physical beings have a spirit, right? We're spiritual beings. And that's what the program teaches. Even AA teaches that. Without a conscious connection of your higher power, you have no chance. Good luck. You can get time. You can withdraw from drugs and alcohol, but you'll find its way back in you. It's the same thing with everything else in life. You can go to church and join the Mormon church. You can join the Christian church. You can join the Baptist. You can be a Taoist, a Buddhist, or whatever. But if you don't find a connection with a true higher power and live from a spiritual aspect and really reconnect with who you were supposed to be, whether the world got its talons into you, then you're not going to make it. You just aren't.
Well, because isn't
even members of our church, right? We baptize people and they flee. And they flee because they still haven't had a spiritual connection, or they didn't reconnect with it. Like you used to talk about all the time. I didn't want to be the guy coming home that just shells, all my mission stories, right? It's that's cool. And those are great and it's real. But I look at pictures of my mission and it wasn't that long ago. And I'm like, it seems like someone else's life. I have no connection to that. You know what I'm trying to say? Zero connection. It's the reason why I cried when we were playing Macklemore, because that's recent.
Yeah.
It's all about what living water if I don't drink, I'm going to get thirsty. And so most people don't realize how unconnected they are to themselves.
Got me thinking of the sales pitch of the atheist, the agnostic, the no churchy people. The authentic self is you're an animal.
Yeah. Well, they teach you that.
Like, well,
limbic
but like,
side of your brain.
The authentic self is you're
related. Yeah,
you're just
DNA.
evolved. You're just another animal that just evolved. And like, how
you're a
bummer-
monkey. You're just gotten a little. You now stand upright,
or
and you don't have a tail anymore, and this, that, and the other. And so then they start to pitch you. And listen, I don't. Once again, I think the people are being authentic with what they believe. But if I'm looking at through spiritual lens, which I'm trying to look at things again, look at the media, look at the stuff that's being pushed on me and you and everyone else. You look at it when you read the news from a spiritual thing, it changes, right? If you believe in God and Satan and all this stuff, and you look at it like, oh, the God of this world. Christ only referred to two gods, his Father in heaven and Satan. He referred to him as the God of this world at one point in his ministry. And that's powerful. If Jesus is the Christ and he's the only unblemished being to ever walk the earth, and he views Satan as the God of this earth, and he has dominion over the whole thing, meaning everything that's natural, everything that's good that has ever been put on the earth, but he has dominion over it, then I think we need to be careful with what we're putting in our bodies. Just because it's natural means nothing. Now, if you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Christ, you don't believe in Satan, doesn't mean all that stuff's still not going to happen. It just means you can do whatever you want, I guess. Doesn't mean you won't have the consequences from it.
Fascinating if you read that the temptation of Christ when Satan came to tempt him after his 40-day fast.
Yeah.
Like, just listen to what he
When
said.
he's at his weakest moment,
Yeah.
right? Fasted. Like, so authentic self, like it was probably being disconnected. I mean, you fast for 24 hours. Have you ever tried to fast longer than that? We have friends that do it for 7-10 days.
No.
I tried it once. I made it 24 hours and ate unhealthy for 8 months after.
I went on a motorcycle trip with that guy, and he's almost convinced me of it again.
Yeah, I almost did it. Yeah, it's the same thing. I watched Chris Hemsworth on the document, and I'm like, oh, I want to do it again. But the reason why you don't is because, dude, you feel disconnected. You go, like I said, you go without caffeine for 24 hours, you're not going to feel like yourself. Yeah. You go without for 10 hours, you're not going to feel like yourself. Imagine 40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah.
Holy crap. The fact that, once again, he was perfect. Most of us would have tanked. Throw yourself off the building, angels will save you. We would have been like, all right, I'm out. Like, we're at the worst. So, I mean, going back to that, you just got to be careful. Just so from a spiritual lens, listen, if you found yourself through one use of ayahuasca and mushrooms, great, good for you. I don't think it's the right thing for me. You can do whatever you want, though.
But
it's your life. What I found is doing the steps and being connected to a group of men and women who are perfectly imperfect, but are getting honest with each other weekly. That's all I need.
When you left last night's meeting, you went to a meeting last night, right?
Yeah, I was on fire.
You called me. I'm in the middle of a Monopoly game.
Yeah.
Couldn't take it.
Called like 15 people.
Did you really?
You were the first person. You didn't answer me.
Sorry.
Yep.
I was crushing my family.
I know you were.
Monopoly.
I told you better win because I said if you lost, I'd be pissed.
They started getting tired and sad, but I did bankrupt 2 of my family members.
Nice.
And I'm close to getting my 3rd bankrupt. He's going to finish it tonight.
Nice. We tried to play Monopoly one time with my little girl. They couldn't handle it. Everyone cried.
I have to remind them, like, this is just a game. They're like, you're so mean, Dad. I'm like,
I know. That's what they say to me.
This is a game.
Yeah, I know.
The game's to win.
People,
like, it's not socialism. It's called Monopoly.
Yeah, I know.
If we're playing socialism, then we'll play a different game.
Yeah, exactly. That's literally. I think our family didn't talk for like 24 hours to each other, and I threw my back out. I haven't played Monopoly since. Most men are the same.
Dude, this game's called Laguna Beachopoly.
That looks great. I saw the picture and I'm like, oh, I can't wait till my kids are older. But it sounds like you had the same experience I had playing with my 8 and 9-year-old.
It doesn't matter what age, like, because
how you're wired.
Because I've partnered up with one of my kids right now on like a joint venture. I don't know if it's against the rules, or whatever, but the most expensive is like I think there's 2 like spots in Laguna Beach, that are the most expensive. Like Woodage, Broadway, and Park Place and Real Monopoly. Yeah. So I partnered with her. First thing we did,
3 Arch and 1 Arch,
something like that, and then we put Keys of the City on it. So like you land on it, you're like going bankrupt on this one. So but she's like stoked on it because like we're crushing everybody else. But then I warned her, I'm like, look, as soon as everyone else is out, I'm coming after you. Yeah. No,
why would you do? You're so mean. I'm the same way. When I play Liar's Dice, people like think I'm a piece of shiz, and I'm like, dude, it's a game. I'm not competitive unless I'm in the game. That's why I don't play a lot of games. I'm
gonna see if I have that video you sent me.
Oh yeah.
Keep talking. I'm gonna send it over to Adam to.
You can airdrop it.
I
got it.
Well, you got to airdrop.
It's on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll get it. Just talk for a little bit about when you left.
Okay.
Like,
So I
why
leave
were
the
you
meeting.
fired up?
Yeah, so I was fired up because we had a guy come who had several months and he relapsed, and you think that would be sad, but it's not sad. What he shared was, well, first of all, it wasn't just him. It was there's only 6 or 7 of us, because it's the holidays, people are out of town, but it was just a small room right where we started, and just to think about where we came from, where we are today. And then this guy who shares his recovery, and how he relapsed and how he's starting to view God as no longer the fire and brimstone God of the Old Testament, but God of the New Testament, which is grace and mercy and love. And it just freaking hit me.
Did you get Adam? Yeah. Is the audio playing on that? I played on mine.
Yeah, so I was fired up. I called you to tell you. I'm glad you didn't answer, because then it inspired me to record this. I'm like, just record this. Just do it. Uh-oh, no volume.
Okay, play. Let's do this. Woo, technical. Watch this. We do this. Hit play, and we'll play his face, and then I'll just Bluetooth it to the Rodecaster.
It's raining.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
What's up, everyone? It's raining,
Let's
but
listen
I'm
to it.
driving hands-free from the phone. And anyways, just left a 12-step meeting. And so I'm just feeling super impressed to share what's on my mind. And so I just thought I'd share it here. I know I'm not the only one that suffers from past traumas and reoccurring in my life, low-limiting beliefs, as well as addictions that are hard to break, and the cycles, sometimes generational trauma and addiction. And so I was just in a 12-step meeting at my church, and one of the guys shared about finally coming to realizing that God is not the way that we all view God differently, and the way he had been viewing God for most of his life. He's in his 30s and grew up in the church, in a Christian church, and he viewed God as the fire and brimstone God, that very black and white Old Testament, punishment, shame, not necessarily shame, but you know what I mean? One God, and if you don't, worship me, it's all hell's gonna break loose, literally. And through his relapses and his recovery, he talked about how he's starting to realize that maybe that's been the wrong way to look at God, and that's maybe what has kept him from wanting to come to God in the first place, and maybe why some of the the cycles of relapse happen. And I remember hearing that and thinking back 10 years ago, my first year, second year of recovery, and listening to Joe and Charlie tapes where he talks about AA and Alcoholics Anonymous and the history of it, and talking about the steps. And he talks about, Charlie talks about maybe Joe or Charlie, I can't remember, I think it was Charlie, the funnier one. He's the one who talked about that, where most of us viewed God as the fire and brimstone God, and not the merciful one of the New Testament. Listen, I don't know who's what, right? It's not my place to try to figure that out. But what I like to believe, and what I've seen in my recovery, and with working with other men in recovery, and even watching women in the meetings and talk about their life and their shares, the God I've come to know, and I don't know him very well. Listen, I go in and out with my religion and my faith. I struggle at times, and I'm just coming out of a 2-year slumber, as I like to call it. But what I believe and what I've seen firsthand for myself and others, trying to find a new way of living, that God is merciful and he does love us, and there's nothing that we can do to keep us from feeling his love. And I know that's not always taught in every religion, but for me, my wife Lexi, we talk about it a lot, that I think just love is there 100%. Now, that doesn't mean that he doesn't want us to turn away from the things that are destructive in our life. Of course not. Just like I love my 4 kids, I'm always going to love them. There's nothing that they can, I just have a hard time believing that there's anything you can do that I would ever stop loving them. But I definitely want to call them out at times, and it's funny, they're at this age now, 9, 11 years old, my 2 older ones, and there's a lot of times where I'm like, dude, you should know better, and I get all intense on them, and then they start to cry, and dude, it's a trip. I start to see myself in them, and I'm like, dude, this is probably what God looks at me at, or my Heavenly Father looks at me, is like, dude, you should know better. But as soon as they break down, my kids break down, I immediately see myself, and I'm like, dude, they just need love right now. They just need compassion. They need someone to hug them and warm. And it's just beautiful to be a part of that. I know this may sound cheesy. You may not know me or whatever. I don't know. But This is actually genuine. It's not easy for me to believe in God. It's not easy for me to believe in Christ. It's not easy for me to believe in mercy and that people are good-hearted, generally. Some of the stuff from my past, it put me in this fight or flight for most of my life. State of mind, this fight or flight, this cortisol, where I don't trust people. And I self-sabotage the people that come into my life that are good because I want to prove that no one's there for me in the end. And it's a horrible way of being and living. But, the last few weeks and months, I've come closer back to my faith and recovery.
You're sniffling over there, Jay.
Yeah, it's good.
This is only
Beautiful.
like less than 12 hours ago you recorded that.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Was it just that one guy share? Or the cumulative meeting?
I didn't go to the Amazon. I didn't spend $6,000. I didn't throw up for 12 hours, 3 nights in a row. I didn't trip and see the other side of the planet and see some machine elves and some snake that come tell me the wisdom of the world. But, I did go for an hour and a half to a church building. It was paid for by members, and I sat in a room with 8 people who were perfectly imperfect. None of them qualified to say anything but their own story.
All volunteered to be there.
All volunteered. No one's getting paid. And I left and I had that realization. So, and I felt changed. So that's what I'm trying to say. Listen, you can do whatever you want. It's your life. But for me and for most of my friends in recovery, we found, and you agree with this too, with church and the meetings, it's just, you can plug into this and you can be you can be changed from the inside, from your core, by just plugging in and getting honest with other people and being vulnerable and being in a safe place and hallowed ground and, disconnecting from the world for an hour and a half. It's not that long. An hour and a half, and I was changed to make that video, come home, and I was like, I woke up at 4 a.m. renewed, spirit renewed. Here we are. I feel renewed. Like that's, and so I got to keep filling that cup up, right? Because it'll drain. The battery goes down, right? My kid's baby fighting, and then it was like, it's raining. But it's like, dude, I got to go to the gym. I got to do these healthy things. I got to listen to something, put on music at first because I was tired. Then that music's not positive. So then I put on a Bible thing, and then I switched it, and then now we're here. So it takes work to tap into the spirit. It takes work to be in recovery and to find, change in your life. But it's possible, and you don't need to. I didn't take drugs to feel that way. But I felt different when I recorded that. That's not me, that was, I wrote in the Instagram. I said it sounds cheesy at one point because I know me. I'm like a most sarcastic SOB, and I make fun of everything. It's always been my MO. And I love to call fake people out because you can see it when you've been fake.
The music sound cheesy.
Sound cheesy,
but it was
worked.
perfect.
But it's perfect.
Yeah,
That's what's
it
crazy.
worked.
It made me crazy. That's like without that music, it would have been cool. But
the music was
makes it better. I know.
Nice
I'm
touch.
learning. I tried to get the words to pop up and I couldn't figure that out. But the point is that I was.
Right after that, you've put a conspiracy video right after
I
that
know.
story.
It shows you hey, I ain't being fake. That's why I said that. Someone's gonna watch that because my thing's not private, my account. They're gonna look at this as me trying to be cheap. Dude, fake guy. What's he trying to sell? And then they're gonna follow my next photo. It's like conspiracy theory about
It was seeding the clouds.
Seeding in the clouds, dude. That's no longer conspiracy. It's a fact. So that's how you know it's genuine. That's how you know. I mean, I can't speak for other people. I just know for myself. I felt moved upon and changed after an hour and a half of sitting in a room in a circle with a few men and a couple women. And that's powerful. I didn't go to Amazon to do that.
Takeaways, even for us normies, of going to a church meeting, whatever. You can go to a 12-step meeting, sit in the back.
And judge.
I
did that. I fold my arms.
The arms.
These people, I'm not like them.
Who's he think he is? He's up there sharing.
We had a lady there last night like that. So,
but we could do that. We could do that at any church.
Yeah.
We could dress up in some clothes to look better. What are they talking about? Not participate, not try to engage,
or you can go there and just
get
be
something
honest.
Or you can go there to try to.
And it's crazy. Every time I go to these meetings, you see the newcomers. They always start to share. Or you've heard this, where you're like, I wish church was like this. Mm-hmm. You always hear, I wish our elders quorum. I wish my relief site. It's like, dude, then make it that way.
Yeah.
Those meetings were founded by normal people. No one gave us a rhetoric. I mean, remember we looked into it, what should it be? And you were asking me, I'm like, I don't know. I've only been to this one. And you did a lot of research. But reality is dude, we're not qualified to do any of the things that we've done. We're sitting here with cameras facing us now, lights. You've done a lot of research and everything, and we have someone helping us out. It's awesome. But once again, we're just two people. So if you feel moved upon by the Spirit to do certain things and to share the message, or if you've come to realization, however you came there, here's the cool part. This world, the universe is like, can I read the quote by Robert Bell? There's
you pull it up or
yeah, do you have it? I don't know if I have it. Hold on.
I know what you're talking about.
Let me grab it real quick. It's so powerful. It has to be shared. So I read this book called, it's from Robert Bell, and one of my good friends who I work with, who's just been a huge inspiration for recovery and just life and spirituality and business. He shared this, Robert Bell. The book is called How to Be Here, and the other one is What is the Bible? But the quote from the book that is so powerful is right here. The universe.
Do you want to?
Yeah, hold on. Oh, I'll just read it.
Okay.
The universe is unfinished, and God is looking for partners in the ongoing creation of the world. So once again, the universe is unfinished, right? And the reason why that's so powerful is if you want to pull this up, let me send this to you. Let me send this real quick. No, it's off. Oh, my thing's off. It makes it more powerful when you look at the pillars of the creation.
It's a visual.
Yeah. When you think of that quote, and hold on, just send the pillars of creation. Did I send you that?
It's a picture of like when
it's from the heloscope. Yeah, that right there. It's right there. It's my buddy Taylor. So right there. So the pillars of creation. Right. This is taken from the Hubble telescope. It's like the world's greatest.
Like that's a real picture.
That's a real photo of what's really happening, galaxies and galaxies or whatever way. Like,
it trips me out when you look through. Like, they got these camera lenses that go.
This is matter unorganized, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so this matter unorganized, and they call it the
creation. We don't know where it ends.
Yeah, we have no idea. But it's being created. This is how stars are formed. This is how planets are formed. The planet we're on started like this.
Yeah.
Interesting. Saw another video that talks like that. But anyway, so you see this, and it's like, and so then you think about that quote: the universe is it's not finished, and God's looking for partners to help in the finishing and the creation of it. Once again, if you feel moved upon, if you had a life-changing experience, recovery, faith expounding event, share it. And now they found like another thing that trips you out, your words, galaxies away, like it affects molecules infinity away. Like I can't even understand it. It seems like science fiction, but every thought and every word that I say affects the universe. So if it's the ripple effect, and this is what I wanted to believe over the last couple of years, right? When I was leaving kind of religion and recovery, I drop a coin in this water or a rock in this water. Like I'm not affecting anyone. I'm not self-sabotaging anymore, like I used to. So I'm not affecting anyone if I don't participate. But you do. The lie is, no matter what you choose to do or not do, you do affect the world around you. You are connected. We are spiritually connected. This is where the hippies do have it right, and the mushroom people, because they believe we're all connected. And it's a fact. We are. It's a fact. Science.
Some truth mingled in there.
Yeah. And so when you drop this water, so what I come to realize over the last several months is I want to be the ripple effect for good and not the bad. And even though I may be hardwired or programmed from my past traumatic events and my response to those traumatic events, that wants to be negative and wants to affect the world in that 5-year-old who's been hurt, I want to be the 36-year-old dealing with every circumstance. You know what I mean? So it's you have to be conscious. You can't just be slumbering. I can't have a substance that numbs me down a little bit, because if I have anything, the smallest molecule of CBD will change the way I view the world. Right? It may not make me high, but it definitely numbs my frontal cortex. It definitely puts holes in the brain. I've done the scans. I've seen it. So being conscious and what do you know? The church teaches being 100%. But I think that picture is just amazing. You got to look it up. It's called The Pillars of Creation, and it's beautiful. And you think about that. God wants us to partner with him. He's not doing it on his own.
What is that thing in the corner?
What? It's a cord?
No,
what is that?
Right there.
Oh, that's they then
You should have
gifted me.
brought- You don't have it?
I have it. It's on my wall.
It should be right here
It should
in the
be.
corner.
Oh, that'd be sick. We will bring it.
Bring
the
that
magnet
in.
effect. Because so on this, I have a picture. Let me send it to you.
No, we got it.
All right.
It's on the screen, Adam.
Yeah.
Popping.
Well, yeah. The actual picture of the surfboard that was given to me as a gift. this is where I gave that talk. So all those slides we just read about addiction was here on the stage. This is the vision I had when I was in the breath work. I was on that exact stage, wearing the exact clothes I was wearing. It was a trip. And I didn't know they'd give me this gift for, it's called All Day J. And they had it custom painted, a surfboard from Lost, Mayhem surfboard. And then as a magnet, it says the magnetic effect. And one of our VPs, Ty, always talks about when you're in the zone of genius and you're doing things the right way, you turn on the magnet effect and people are just gravitating to you. Yeah, and you just go like you hold a coin and magnet. Well, that's the same thing with recovery and religion and like spirituality and recovery. Like, I want to believe I was trying to do something the right way. I don't want to be self-righteous. I don't want to be viewed as something I'm not. And I want to pull back. But if God wants you to be a part of the creation, then he's going to pull you back. And when you get all in, that magnet effect is inevitable and people will follow, and it's okay. It's like, you don't need to be scared of it. You don't need to have fear of it. So if you're listening to this and you're something, we used to get emails like, how do I get a meeting started? How this, dude, I wish I had you guys, dude. God wants you to do this in you. Yeah. If we can do it, you can do it. So when I hear this, like, it's so great. It's like, cool. I don't believe that anyone else can do the same thing wherever you're at. If you're in Michigan, Iowa, if you're in Afghanistan, like to a degree, you can share and you can do the right things you need to do.
We get inspired to do things. We just have to act.
Yeah. We have limiting beliefs that tell us that I can't affect. And my limiting beliefs tells me that all the time, even when I'm doing great things. That's the crazy, baffling part of addiction, is it tells us even in the midst of doing great things that you're still not good enough to do it. That's just baffling, but it's real.
We all slug with that. All right. I think this is a good way to end.
Yeah, good, because I have
Hit
to
our
go
outro. We're learning this
we're getting this new
bottom
setup.
right button.
Bottom right button, dude.
On the road.
Anyways, I love that picture. Pillar of Creations. Later, Brad.
Till next time.
Next Step Podcast. I have to pee. So